Next, we'll move to item 5. Mr. Gray.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon.
I'd be willing to substitute the same deal on this bill. If the
we want to hear from you, Mr. Gray.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Today, before you, I've brought AB 174. AB 174 is directed at addressing the shortfalls in the medical infrastructure in the Central Valley. As you may or may not be aware, the Central Valley suffers from an inadequate number of physicians, clinics, and infrastructure to serve its growing population. This is a problem only really further exacerbated both by our continued cuts and or lack of restoration with Medi-Cal, in addition to the challenges as we seek to increase our roles, our insurance roles with the Affordable Care Act. And this bill contains both a short-term and a long-term solution to that problem. The short-term is to increase the capacity of the PRIME program, the Merced component of the PRIME program, so as to bring more medical students into the area, which has been shown to be the most effective method of increasing physician access in a region. In addition to that, it contains within the bill some seed money for the UC Merced Medical School, which of course would be a long-term solution to increasing access throughout the entire Central Valley. It's an important bill. It's a first step in solving a very difficult, very large problem, and I would ask for your support here today.
Thank you. Any testimony in favor? Anybody wanting to speak in opposition? Any questions from committee or comments? Mr. Harper.
Just in terms of the $1 million, what is there anything in this that's built in terms of accountability on where the $1 million is spent, or any kind of record in terms of directing that?
Well, we're somewhat limited in our accountability, as you may be aware, with the University of California system, a situation some members of this House are trying to resolve through a variety of measures. But in fact, the $1 million is directed to the campus to conduct basically a feasibility study. There's going to be a lot involved in bringing a medical school to the area. This would be the first step, and certainly when we get the results back of the feasibility study, that'll be a good time to have a review of this initial relatively small investment in the campus towards that effort.
Mr. Linder?
I want to congratulate you for this bill. I consider me a partner. You know that our communities are very, very similar. We have a very underserved medical community, and I think that this type of investment in the communities is going to be really good for the region, and I know that your region needs it just like mine does. So I feel the same pressure. So glad to support it. Please let me know how I can partner with you on it.
Thank you.
Ms. Weber?
Yes, I have a similar question as Mr. Harper did with regards to accountability for the amount of money that we're requesting. This money is to be given out of the general funds to the University of California, so it's to be added to the UC budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And are there any strings attached to the dollars that are there, as we did with the strings that attached with regards to giving the money? That, and if UC increased its student enrollment, we would not give the money. There are no strings attached to these dollars to ensure it. I think we had this similar problem with Riverside when money was given for a medical school in Riverside, and it turned out to be used for other purposes. And so we had to come back the following year and make another allocation. So I'm just trying to figure out why there aren't any, at least, strings attached, that if it doesn't happen, if the study doesn't occur, then they don't get the money, or either taking the money and giving it to a different source to do the study. That would not necessarily, that could involve UC, but not would make them the receivers of the dollars themselves. So I'm kind of, I'm always leery when we put money in UC budget with specifics, especially if they're not sitting here at the table saying they support the idea as to whether or not that money will actually be utilized for that purpose. So do you have any thoughts concerning that?
Certainly, I'd be open. Thank you for the question. I'd be open for additional suggestions by the committee on how we might better tie that money to the purpose. I think, obviously, absent the money, there will be no feasibility study. So the concept that a feasibility study occur and that we reimburse later would not bring the idea to fruition. Because this doesn't involve actual, unlike the PRIME program, which of course is the other part of the bill, this doesn't involve student bodies, butts in seats, so to speak. This is in fact just a feasibility study so that the administration can put in place the necessary steps to secure a medical school, as was done down south. But I appreciate the question, I appreciate the concern, and as you know, Ms. Weber, from our discussions, I share some of those concerns about the system overall and very much would be open to the committee's suggestions, or we could work with the committee going forward as well to institute some amendments for more oversight.
My assumption is a bill this size, would it go to budget or is this
Through appropriations.
going to appropriations, $1 million
Yeah.
through approach? Okay.
There's Mr. Murphy from UC in the audience. I don't know if you want to take an opportunity to address, if you would, or can, or not.
So my colleague.
Okay.
I'm not Mr. Murphy. My name is Angela Gilliard, and I represent the University of California on Health System. And so to answer, I'm not sure
Ms.
exactly.
Weber's question was if the legislature were to appropriate the $1 million, what's our guarantee? And the general fund of UC, what guarantees does the legislature have that the money is used for the intended purpose?
So it is my understanding that actually the conversation about UC Merced and what it would take to build a medical school has been probably a 10-year conversation, maybe 8-year conversation. And as part of the proposal, there's always been the need to have planning money for the feasibility of the school. So in terms of, $1 million to plan, it would most likely go to hiring the needed deans and so forth that would actually plan the medical school. So if the money was given to the university, it would be used for the purpose intended. It's $1 million. It's not, enough money to actually build a medical school,
Sure.
but it's just for the feasibility study, whether it's an expert dean at the UC Merced campus or some other way that the university would use to do the feasibility study. But it's my understanding that the plan has always been that if this money was given, it would be given and used for that specific purpose.
Ms. Weber?
How old is your knowledge of this?
About
I should ask.
About 6 years.
Okay.
And I
So are you representing the university administration, I should ask? Are you representing the UC president and the folks who basically make money decisions?
I am, yes, I represent the University of California Office of the President on health issues. So, yeah, it's my understanding. I don't have any other understanding that if the money is given for this specific purpose, that it wouldn't be used for other than for this specific purpose.
Okay, I just asked because as I look at the thing, it says that UC has not taken a position on the bill.
At this point, we're not taking a position on the bill for other reasons. I think our primary responsibility, the UC Merced, is to build the campus itself. to build the infrastructure for the medical sciences programs that would eventually lead to a medical education program. We're in strong support of this the San Joaquin Valley Prime program, as we are in support of all of the UC Prime programs. There are about 330 students currently in Prime programs in the University of California, and that's the equivalent of one full medical school. So, and the state is actually supporting, I think, 78 in terms of dollars, 78 of the 330 students. So we are in strong support of the San Joaquin Valley Prime program, and we are in strong support of having the funds for the San Joaquin Valley program allocated. We just, in terms of our administrative processes, we're not at the place where we're taking a position at this point, but so
I might be able to answer that question a little bit, Ms. Weber.
Okay.
As you may or may not remember, when we initially cited the University of California at Merced, the UC did not have a position.
Right.
As they don't take positions on individual campuses, is my understanding, as a general rule, but rather for the system as a whole. My interest, obviously, is to represent the Central Valley and more specifically my district in Merced and Stanislaus County. And this is a good step forward for us. As far as accountability built into the actual legislation, I think the date certain with which they have to provide a report to the fiscal and policy committees, including this committee here, and I believe that date is March 1st, 2019. Were that to come, and obviously we didn't have a report before us, there would be important questions and oversight that would need to be conducted, and I would join you in those efforts.
Okay.
Ms. Baker, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also applaud you, Mr. Gray, for addressing an issue that is important, and that is not only doctors in the Central Valley, but in California. We need more in California.
Thank you.
So I support this. Do have some questions, and it may be something that we get to work on together as this bill goes through. The first is really focusing our limited resources on what will get doctors here. My understanding certainly is that medical schools can draw medical professionals to their communities, and therefore they can provide more health care opportunities. But it's really the residency that determines where doctors ultimately end up practicing, which of course is a federal program. And so as this study happens, perhaps we can work together on making sure that the UC study addresses that, because we need to scrutinize that very carefully if that's the best way to make sure we're getting doctors in California and in the Central Valley. I'd like to do that with you, and also just how we can continue to support the Prime program. And that this isn't just one way to do it. There may be others. And finally, I suppose it's more a comment than a question, and it comes a little bit from your testimony today. It shouldn't be a predetermined outcome that the study is going to say medical school is what we need at UC Merced, given what the goals are. So we do need to scrutinize that carefully and understand that it is a feasibility study to see the case be made, because these are funds that can potentially go to good uses for getting doctors in our communities in the Central Valley and elsewhere in California. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to also add that, like you, the Inland Empire, Mr. Lender, Ms. Brown, we also faced a big shortage of doctors, and it was a long road for us to get a medical school established at the UC Riverside campus, and I support your effort to do the same for UC Merced and your effort to bring more doctors to your part of the state of California. So with that, I want to say that I will be voting in favor of your bill this morning, AB 174, and ask for a motion.
Second.
First by Mr. Lender, second by Ms. Baker. Madam Secretary, if you call the roll.
Medina.
Aye.
Medina, aye. Baker. Aye. Baker, aye. Bloom. Aye. Bloom, aye. Chavez. Harper.
Nay.
Harper, no. Irwin.
Aye.
Irwin, aye. Jones Sawyer.
Aye.
Jones Sawyer, aye. Levine. Linder.
Aye.
Linder, aye. Lowe.
Aye.
Lowe, aye. Santiago.
Aye.
Santiago, aye. Weber.
Aye.
Weber, aye. Williams.
Aye.
Williams, aye.
Mr. Gray, your motion, your bill passes to appropriations, 10-1. Do we want to keep it open for? Sure. Yeah. We'll keep it open for add-ons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.